name's Janine, and I am a volunteer here at SCORE. SCORE Utah is one of the chapters across the country. It is part of the Small Business Administration. We offer free mentoring for small business owners, for people who are in startup mode, are in growth mode, whatever that is, free mentoring. We also provide webinars and workshops, which this is one of those. We have a lot of workshops here in the Utah area, from St. George to Salt Lake and up into Ogden. So we do have workshops as well. These webinars that you're looking at today and that you've attended in the past are all archived on our website, and you can access them in the future. And then we also have a vast library of online resources with guides and templates and checklists, etc., that might be very, very helpful to a small business owner. We have, whoops, hello, what happened? I didn't want to do that. Let me go back again. There we go. Sorry about that. I went one too far. And if you do need to contact us, you probably know how to do this already. You can do this through our website. You can give us a call. We have many volunteers who are mentors from many, many different industries and levels of in the organization. They're there to help. You can scan this QR code and give us a call, and we'll be more than happy to chat with you. With that, I will stop that share now, and I want to introduce Jill. So again, if you've been through this series, this is our last 5 of 5 workshops that Jill has done for us. You know Jill already. Jill Schroyer is the owner of Expedition HR, a consulting firm, and she has done a fantastic job. So I'm looking forward to this last and final session. Jill, I give it to you. Oh, we can't hear you, Jill. I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. Let me just go ahead and share my screen. I'll just give a little plug for SCORE. They have been instrumental in my business growth and development. So really excited to just be part of this and to kind of give back what I can through this today. So perfect. All right. Let me know if that comes up here. Okay. Can you see that, Janine? All right. Awesome. Well, everyone, thanks again for showing up. I don't know if any of you have been here before. I'd love to know if you have been to any other sections of the training the last 4 weeks, since we're, as Janine said, we're in week 5. And I'm actually really excited about this last training. I think it's going to bring everything together. If you've been here before, you know that I get on a bit of a soapbox about commitments to time. And ironically enough, that's our training theme today, is that marvelous managers are excellent time management role models. So today you can rest assured that you'll be out of here no later than 1:30. Ideally, we'll stop somewhere 1:20, 1:25-ish to see if anyone has questions, just so that we can get you on your way. And I want to make sure that you know you can be fully present, fully engaged, knowing that we're not going to run over. Janine's also great with the time. So that's my commitment to you. One thing we talked about in previous weeks was being a marvelous manager is someone that builds trust in relationships. And when you have an agenda and you tell people how long you're going to be there, and what I call it is you time keep in every meeting, you build not only trust, but you also build that psychological safety. And when you have psychological safety with your team, you have got so much. You can give feedback. You can, have meaningful conversations. They're going to be more loyal to you. So let's dive in with today's topic. As Janine mentioned, just a little bit about me. I've built teams within workplaces as well as my own Expedition HR team. And I love talking to managers really about ways that they can be a better manager and avoid what I call sticky situations. That's my knack, in my area of expertise, is dealing with the stickiest of situations. And so what I've taught over these last weeks is how to be a marvelous manager and hopefully avoid those sticky situations. So those of you that have been here and those of you that haven't, just kind of where we've come. We had the first session was about communicating well. And if you see me looking around, I've got this on my second screen. We talked about building relationships and trust. We talked about providing feedback, working on our emotional intelligence skills. And again, we come all the way around to the fact that a marvelous manager is a time management role model. So this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. And you might be wondering, well, she's in HR. HR, how does this have to do with HR? And why is this even part of this? Well, but not only does being mindful of time and making sure you have agendas, etc., build trust, but it's just also a way to set good boundaries. So when you have good time management skills, you also set good boundaries. And that's where I really come in with the phrasing around a boundary. A boundary can come off as like, I don't have time for you, kind of a mean phrasing. Or from when the HR part comes in, is there's better ways to set boundaries. So, as I ask of you every week, if you'd be open to learning one thing today, even if you say, well, I'm pretty good with time management, be open to learning one thing today. And not only that, but implementing it within the next couple weeks. If I can get your commitment to that, because the reality is in any of these seminars or webinars you watch, if you go away with one or two things that you're going to put into action right away, that is gold. You're not going to remember everything. So extract those things that you want to really learn from today and take them with you forward. So we're going to talk about three things today. Marvelous managers, they effectively communicate priorities with their team, which relates to time management. We're going to talk, the second point is how marvelous managers manage meetings. They always have agendas and they time keep out loud. I'm going to talk about each one of these things. And the third, they set healthy time management boundaries through their words and actions. So that's what we're going to cover today. So let's talk about this first one, that marvelous managers communicate their priorities with their team. This is a key thing I see left out when we talk about being a time management role model. If you're a manager and you're kind of going about your day, reacting, putting out fires, you are not keeping your eye on what are the true priorities. So marvelous managers not only know what their own priorities are and they lead by example, we're going to talk more about that, they're also setting priorities for or making sure their team knows their priorities. A really good book that I was recommended to me once that I love is called A CEO Only Does Three Things. And in this book, there's a quote that I loved. It says, every project must be connected to at least three of our company values before we consider it a priority. Marvelous managers know this. They know what the company values are, and they know, therefore, what the priorities are that they should be working towards. Another book I really like is Greg McKeown. He wrote Essentialism and Effortless, two phenomenal books, probably two of my favorite books I've ever read when it comes to business. I plan on rereading them. And he talks also about in Essentialism what's really important. And he talks about when we know our priorities, we have to replace words like I have to, or it's all important, or I can do both. Instead, with words, I mentioned words and actions when we're setting our boundaries. I choose to do this. Only a few things really matter, which are your priorities. And I can do anything, but not everything. So this really goes back to essentialism, talks about what are our priorities. Marvelous managers take the time to figure out what those are, and they go about their days towards working towards their priorities and making sure their team also knows what their priorities are. Another way to look at priorities, which is super simple and really effective, is okay, we've got all these things on our plate. There's a couple analogies I've heard. You might have heard these too, like a jar, and we've got the big, whether it be golf balls in the jar, those are your priorities. And everything else is like pebbles and sand. And if you put in the pebbles and sand first, you're not going to have any room for those golf balls, which are the most important things. So what I'm showing here on the slide is kind of another analogy of how we get to our priorities. So let's say we're holding all these things, the analogy of holding a bunch of like balls in our hand, and some are glass and some are plastic. And if we drop them, some of them are going to bounce or roll away and they're going to be okay. We'll get to them later, but some, if we drop, they're going to break. And those are our priorities, meaning if we are paying too much attention to the plastic balls, so to speak, we're going to lose sight of these priorities and they're going to fall and they're going to break, and something is going to result from not adhering to what our true priorities are, again, related to our company values, what we're working for, just the purpose of our organization. So if you think we have on your plate that day, think, okay, if I drop one of these, is something kind of detrimental going to happen? Or can I put this off till tomorrow or the next day because it's truly not a priority? Marvelous managers also, the second thing they do when it comes to time management, again, there's many things we can do as marvelous managers, but again, we're only going to talk about these three. So the second one is they always have agendas and they time keep out loud. So I've kind of put two things in this second point here. So they always have agendas. So what does it show your team when you have an agenda for every meeting? You're showing respect for their time and you're being a role model. Every meeting I set, we say, okay, what do we want to discuss? What are we hoping to get out of this meeting? And what questions are we hoping to answer in the meeting? Going into a meeting without any sort of agenda is like a ship sailing without any sort of compass. It doesn't know where it's going. It's probably never going to make it to shore. They're going to run out of food. We've got to make sure we know where we're going because, frankly, it's a waste of everyone's time if we don't know what we're trying to cover. So, when I talk about agendas, this is specifically what I'm talking about. Have the discussion points. What do we want to accomplish? And what questions do we need to answer in the meeting? It's just three simple things. And in fact, you can even combine the first and second and say, what do we want to discuss and what outcome do we want in this meeting? Or what goal are we trying to reach in this meeting? If we're unsure, it's time to pause the meeting. So I'm jumping ahead a little bit. What happens when there's no agenda? Then there should be no meeting. If we don't know what we're coming together to do, what a waste of time for everyone. And if you as the manager are pulling a meeting together where you don't know what's going to happen in the meeting, I guarantee you you're not going to have any good result or any meaningful end to the meeting. So if we have, it's like we say when we're just setting our goals, if we have vague goals, we're going to have what? We're going to get vague results. So if you don't have an agenda, in fact, I was asked this once when we were talking about this, and they said, in my company, can I decline? An employee asked me once, can I decline a meeting that doesn't have an agenda? And I said, well, you've got to know the culture of the company. But immediately, of course, I thought, shame on the manager who's not setting an agenda for a meeting. And I'll add something on to this. We should never have a meeting if we're not sure who needs to be there as well. You ever get invited to a meeting and you feel like you're in this big catch-all? It's like you're in one of 8 people in the meeting and you don't say anything and you find you're just multitasking and then they call your name for something and you've been doing something else. That can really cause disgruntled employees. If you're just inviting them, are they nice to have at the meeting or do they need to be there? We want to really clarify that as part of the agenda here. So the second part of number 2 that I'll talk about, and I get on a soapbox about this one, is timekeeping out loud. What do you mean by this, Jill? Well, let me share with you. You heard me at the beginning of this meeting say we have 30 minutes today. So that's one thing I want to remind you to say in your meetings, in addition to your agenda. And if you want to take your agenda to next level, put how much time you're going to spend on each piece of the agenda. Your talking points, we're going to spend, say we have 30 minutes. We're going to spend 8 minutes on this, 3 minutes on this, and you'll be amazed how you can stick to these time frames if you outline it. Again, if you have kind of a vague idea of how long you're going to spend, you're going to have vague results at the end of the meeting, and you're going to have a vague idea of when the meeting is going to end. And that's frustrating for everyone. And again, it shows a lack of respect. So saying things like, we have 1 hour to meet today, and our goal of this meeting is, and you share from the agenda, which you hope everyone looked at, you share what the goal is. And maybe you can say, does anyone have any questions? Was there anything that we want to be sure to cover? Another thing is important to say when it goes along with timekeeping is we have 15 minutes left. So to ensure we get through everything on our agenda, and maybe the last part of that is we need to eliminate an item and talk about a later meeting time, or we need to hustle through these 3 next points to ensure we end at, let's say, 1:30 or whatever our time is. So I'll give you an example. We're 15 minutes into our training today. So I'm going to go ahead and get through timekeeping and finish in just a few minutes on the last point. So we leave some time for questions and maybe even let everyone out a few minutes early. Another way to voice timekeeping is, as we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to talk about? So that term, as we wrap up, you ever get the people in meetings that they're not respecting what time you have in the meeting and they just kind of go on and there's no period in there and you can't kind of jump in. And when you have a chance, say, excuse me, and even a gentle hand gesture in a meeting, say, just to jump in really quick. As we wrap up, we've got only 5 minutes left. We want to make sure we have a meaningful wrap to this meeting. Is there anything else you'd like to add? And really important thing about timekeeping, should we put a successive time on the calendar to address these other items? Unless everyone in the meeting is okay with going over and you ask everyone's permission, does everyone have 3 extra minutes? And if not, we'll end the meeting. Always ask permission. You probably recall during the feedback module and building trust about inviting others in or shutting them out. We never just want to go over time. If you're not talking about the time at least 5 minutes from the end of the meeting, you risk going over. And again, that key piece about respect. You don't want your employees to think, yeah, my manager always goes over. They have no respect for my time. We ask a lot from our employees and we want them to get their job done. So, what kind of message are we sending if we're always running over in meetings and not respecting the time that we committed to by setting up the meeting? Now, I also want to add one thing. If we think the meeting is going to last 30 minutes, let's go through our agenda. And if they don't balance, we want to reach out to the group and make sure everyone's okay with a different length of meeting. What I don't like to do is just slap on an hour meeting when we don't really know how long things are going to take. If it's a 15-minute meeting, we should know that from our agenda. It's going to be a 30-minute meeting. Again, if we have 15 bullet points, it's not going to be a 15 or 30-minute meeting. It's probably going to be an hour meeting. And I do believe once we get over an hour meeting, things may start getting inefficient. So try and keep it within those boundaries and set a follow-up if needed. There's an expression, we're gonna get what we need to get done within the time that we have. So if you set a meeting for 1 hour with a big agenda, you're more likely going to get through it if you are upfront with each of the bullet points. So I recommend timekeeping at the beginning and at the end of the meeting. So everyone's clear on what you need for time or how much time you have for the meeting. And then as you get to the end or in the middle, we've got about 15 minutes left. We're moving a little slower than anticipated. Make sure you voice it out loud. Everyone's not going to just assume that you're going to wrap up on time. All right, the third thing I want to talk about today before we kind of come into the close here is how does that marvelous managers set healthy time management boundaries through their words and actions. You've already heard some of this in the presentation so far. But I'd like to share a couple things. If your team is always interrupting you and you're using that as your excuse for not being able to get things done, you have trained your team to behave this way. So I hope that gives you a little bit of pause. It's not okay to just get frustrated. We need to possibly start retraining our team by setting healthy boundaries. And your team also may start leaning on you to figure things out because you always give them the answer. Healthy boundaries serve two purposes. They protect your time, and oftentimes it may encourage your employees to think through things a little more independently. So here are some words you can use when setting boundaries. I call this the firm no. Of course, you can change it to meet your needs, to what feels comfortable for you. But let's say someone interrupts you and you think we've got to get this to stop. I can't have my team walking into my office or pinging me on Slack or texting me or call whatever they're doing. You could say something like, I'm currently focused on delivering ABC project or this priority, and I don't have the bandwidth to meet right now. You're not ready to put a time on it. You've got to just get this done. You can't look at your calendar. That is what I call a firm no. And boundaries are okay to set if done in a way, and we're going to talk about, I have a last slide that kind of talks to if others are disappointed because you can't give them the time. That is, if it's handled in a way that's in high integrity and it's kind and it's direct, them being disappointed and not being able to meet with you right then is not your responsibility. It's okay if they're disappointed, as long as you've handled it professionally and in a kind way and direct. So I call these the no and boundaries. Like, I can't help with that right now as it is not a priority. Remember, number one, it's not a priority. I'd love to make time for this the first of next week. Let's take a look at our calendars and plan a time to connect. This is a clear no. This isn't, is that okay? Will that work for you? Cannot do it right now. And let's look at our calendars and set something up. That way, the person knows, okay, they can't meet now, and I see when I'm going to meet with them next week. Some other phrasing could be, I've set aside some time this afternoon to go through that. I'll take a look then and circle back with you. Let's say someone sends you an email and they want a response and they start pinging you and asking about it. You could give a non-response, which also sends a message. And I also like the response that says, like I say, I've set aside time for this afternoon. I'll take a look then and get back to you. With boundaries, like I mentioned in this slide, you may be training your team to actually disrespect your boundaries if you continually get right back to them when they have a question. Now, I want to be clear. If someone has a question and they can't move forward on a project, we have to know if it's a priority item and they have a question, that may insert itself into your day. If they have a question that is not a priority item, that's when these phrases I'm talking about could come and helpful. So I have the certification. It's called Step Into Your Moxie, and it's all about speaking up and just making sure that we use our voice in a way that's not only effective, but it is this polite and direct and kind. So I have some questions for you. There's an exercise when I do these trainings under the certification, and there's some questions and an exercise that's called Hey Boundary, and I wanted to share those with you today. So, a question for you, if you did try these things, my question for you, what would be the payoff for you if you communicated your boundary? Would it be that you're not saying, I don't have enough time, I can't do that? Would that be a result of this, maybe? Another question, what is it costing you to not set or not uphold your boundaries through your communication? Or to second guess the boundaries you have and say, oh, but I don't want my team to be mad at me. What is it costing you? Last question I'd like to leave you with is, how might you setting boundaries empower the people in your life to define, communicate, and maintain their boundaries as well? Specifically, your employees. And also, if you make this your way of life in your social life, if you don't have time for something, you don't have to be mean about it. You can say, oh, I'm unable to come to that event. Thank you for inviting me. So I'd like you to think on those questions. So I mentioned this earlier, and I'm going to leave you with this thought. Other people's disappointment is not our responsibility, only if we have handled the situation with kindness, integrity, and respect. Remember, direct is kind. When we talked about feedback, being direct is actually a kind way to treat your team. So as we finish, I'd be open for any questions, and I want to just share, I'm offering some videos, and I actually made a little note because I wanted to tell you specifically what these are. Instead of just the topics that we covered today, there's a video in this five manager bundle. They're all under 5 minutes. You can take them and use them. One is how to stay out of hot water in your business as far as with employees, and it's about documenting and just little tips there. One covers the 5-step formula for having tough talks. One covers phrasing, this inviting in versus shutting out phrasing. One is about building trust, which we did cover in this series. And one is about emotional intelligence, which we also covered in the series. So yeah, I'm just here for you to answer any questions at this point. Thank you so much for coming.
Jill, we did have a question, and it's more about your organization. Christine was asking what the origin story of your company name is.
Oh, great. I love that question. So it started off where, I love the mountains. And so kind of I'll try to do this in a nutshell. I kind of look at the business model I have is I support HR teams or organizations that don't have HR. And so I kind of looked at it like a mountain expedition where I am not climbing the mountain for you and getting you to your goals, but I'm there almost like the Sherpas are and carrying your pack and showing you the way so you don't turn a wrong direction and get stuck in a crevasse. And so I thought, well, Expedition HR felt like a mountain expedition. And yeah, I just kind of went with it. It felt very authentic to who I am. Thanks for asking. I love the question.
Right. I don't see anything else. We have another couple of minutes if people have questions.
And actually, Janina, it would be okay to ask, did anyone or is anyone willing and don't feel any pressure, anything that they took away? Sometimes when we share our learning, like a quick, like, ooh, that was good, I'm going to implement that. It kind of prompts others to say, ooh, yeah, actually, I don't remember that from the beginning of the presentation. I'm going to do that too. Of course, no pressure, but any takeaways you're willing to share?
It's a quiet group. Uh, Christina's saying, great webinar. I wish I had attended previous ones. Any advice for those of us who were not able to attend? So I'll just mention, Christine, that these webinars are all recorded and they're on the SCORE website. And so you can access them typically about a week after they occur. But if you go to the SCORE website, go to the Utah chapter and search there's several search options you can do. So search Utah, and then you can use Jill's name. You can search for Marvelous Manager, whatever, and you should see these there in the library.
And it's such a cool series because they were just all of them were under 30 minutes. So I love the
Yep,
length.
bite size.
Yes.
All right. Well, with that, any other questions? Don't see anything. All right. Well, thank you again. You've done just a wonderful job. We so appreciate your time, Jill, and your words of wisdom. And these little bites are just really fun to do. Short little things to make our brain work again and say, oh, how can I do that better? Those are great little hints and ways we can improve being a leader in our organization.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It was my pleasure. It was super fun. Thanks,
All
everyone.
right. Thanks, Jill.